Hi everyone, this is Garrett Yeager, and this is my presentation of my 14-day field experience. I did my 14-day field experience in the Dillon Middle School under the cooperating teachers Becky Telling, who was 6th and 8th grade literacy, and then Mr. Zier, who taught 6th and 7th grade math, as well as an 8th grade kind of just end of the day study games and whatnot. So, as far as a high leverage practice that I used and had success with. I really enjoyed kind of learning how to coordinate and adjust instruction. I would end up teaching two sixth grade lessons and two seventh grade lessons a lot, as well as I would teach another sixth grade lesson a few days later to an inclusion class. And my first day, I tried teaching these like cookie cutter lessons. I would teach it the same way with the same examples and kind of use the same practices for each class that I had the same lesson for. And this was not cutting it. One class would do very well and would get the assignment done before the bell rang and would not need as many examples or help on some of the problems on their homework. And another class, it seemed, would struggle if I taught both of them the same way. They would have way more questions, and they kind of just wouldn't click with the lesson. It wasn't productive. So, what I learned was the first period class, when I dived in to what might be causing this, they were coming into school, they were tired, they were groggy, they haven't gotten that blood pumping yet, or their brain's quite awake fully. And so I really had to up the enthusiasm for this class right at the start and crack jokes with them and be a little goofier and silly with the way I taught these lessons, as well as slowing it down and allowing them to have a few more examples. And then oftentimes I would go over the first couple of problems in their homework with them, and that seemed to benefit quite a bit. There was another class that really struggled with participating in the lessons. And with that class, some of the students in the back tended to get off track and didn't keep up with the pace the rest of the class was on. And so, with those students, I tried cold calling them a little more than the other students. And I would walk over close to them when I was teaching the lesson to make sure they were taking notes and writing down examples or problems that I went over that would be on their assignment. Next is a student that challenged me. So student SA presented a lot of challenges for me. She had a little bit of an attitude towards other students, and it seemed that her peer relation skills were still developing and had a little bit to go. This student was often missing lessons. There were 2 days where she was in ISS and then was called to the office the day before to discuss this ISS, which took her away for 3 lessons. And so coming back, she had had to try and learn this on her own out of the textbook while serving this ISS. With her, I would teach the lesson almost exactly as I had to the rest of the class and give her the notes that I had made for my lessons. And even with all of this knowledge, she would still not attempt any of the problems before asking me for help on almost every single one. For a while, I was helping guide her through the process and the answers and taking a lot of time from other students I could be helping by working with her almost strictly one on one. And after a while, I kind of decided that I was putting in all the effort with this student and it wasn't really being reciprocated. So the next day, when she tried to get me to answer quite a few problems for her, I told her I would not come and help her until she'd attempted the first half of the assignment. And then we would decide if she was on the right track or not. And what I found is this student was actually fully capable of completing the assignments on her own. She really didn't need too many questions. Sometimes it was just clarification for missing the lessons. And I feel like me and this student ended off on a really good note, and hopefully she can continue with this motivation towards doing the work on her own. Keeping students engaged. Stimulation is an excellent brain-based learning element that I saw Mr. Zier use constantly. When Mr. Zier entered the classroom, he was cracking jokes at kids. He was asking them about sports teams that he knew they were following or movies that had came out that he wanted to know if the kids enjoyed. And he could also just catch the kids off guard. Mr. Zier is not a fan of students giving up or quitting. And when he hears the words, "I quit," from a student, he goes over to his closet and he grabs a small little baseball bat that he walks over to the student and slams on the table next to them and starts getting on them about how they can't quit, and is really inspirational to the students in that aspect. Something that my cooperating teacher taught me was scripting out lessons beforehand and what to include in those. So I was scripting out a lot of the vocab and terminology from these lessons in these math classes. And a lot of times I would get up on the board and I would write an example just off the top of my head. And all of a sudden I'm about 5 decimals in thinking, oh gosh, this thing isn't going to end. And that was detrimental to the students because I had to say, well, I messed up here. You know, guys, we're just going to have to round. This is a poor example. We'll do another one. And that really wasn't fair to the students. So what I began doing was writing out all of my examples that I wanted to use. I made sure that they solved evenly, or that the decimal that needed to be continued was to be rounded so they didn't have to do so much division. And so as you can see over here on the left side, this is a lesson that I taught on combining like terms and simplifying expressions. It helped me out tremendously, especially if you look down here under combining like terms, where I had found in the textbook for a different lesson this example of using shapes to help them understand why variables that are multiplied by each other can't have coefficients and need to be squared, or how to combine like terms in that aspect. And over here is solving proportions. This was kind of a different lesson for me to teach. I wasn't as prepared for it and came in and scripted this out real quick, feeling a little rushed. And all of a sudden I looked up and I had about 15 minutes before the kids even got there. So it's not a very long process, and it benefited me, the students, and the flow of the class tremendously. Lastly is something to laugh about. Around my 4th day of teaching in the math class, I'm getting all the students settled down. It's 7th period and they are wired today. I don't know what they had for breakfast or if they had sugar for lunch, but man, these kids had some energy. So getting them calmed down and quieted was really difficult. I kind of had to bring out my teacher's voice and get after them a little bit, like, come on guys, let's sit down and get your workout. And at that point, they all sat down. They were still laughing with each other and joking, but not to the detriment of me teaching the lesson. So I was trying to get them ready to correct their papers. And I said, all right, everybody, get your assignments out from yesterday. And one student puts their leg up on a chair. And I have no idea what they're going to do, but they say, Mr. Yeager, I got to find it. 1 second. And he starts to pull up his pant leg. And all of a sudden, he slides his assignment out of his sock. And I just had to laugh. I tried not to point it out too much, as we really needed to start correcting these papers, but it was one of those where I had to turn away and let my emotions out a little bit, because junior high kids just have so much personality. It was an absolute joy working with them. They're wonderful kids. Mr. Zier and Mrs. Telling are wonderful teachers. This field experience was a real educational opportunity for me that I think I truly benefited from. So thank you guys for listening to my presentation. Have a happy break.